Now, last night's Democratic debate was a pretty breakout moment for Kamala Harris. Now, she jumped on Joe Biden, and that was pretty awesome, and was one of the only people to raise their hand alongside with Bernie Sanders in supporting the abolition of private insurance. In fact, I want to show you that video, and then I'm going to tell you what happened afterwards.
Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? All
right, so that's Kamala Harris. You can see her hands up, right? Now, she got some a little bit of criticism, but she actually got a lot of praise as well for being the only one to stand with Bernie Sanders and saying that she would eliminate private insurance. Okay, that is until this morning. Now, this morning, she immediately appeared on Morning Joe, and she said, no, I don't agree with that. Actually, I do want to keep private insurance. And she said her excuse was, quote, that she had incorrectly heard the question about being whether she would personally use a government plan instead of a private plan. Oh, she thought they were asking, were they asking me if I would use a private insurance plan versus a public? Well, of course I would use a public insurance plan. No, that's not what he asked. Now, I think it's pretty clear what he asked. Would you support eliminating private insurance? Now, Harris later on said, that she would in fact preserve supplemental private insurance along with Medicare for all. So let's get into the details because it is kind of muddy here. And there's a lot of I guess, not necessarily misinformation, but a lot of confusion going around about the idea of having private insurance in a Medicare for all system. So now, for one, Medicare for all under Bernie Sanders' plan doesn't actually ban all private insurance. Now, what it does is that it effectively bans private insurance. Now, what do I mean by that? Because you might think, wait, it's the same thing. No. What it says is that it bans duplicative coverage. Now, meaning that if something is covered by Medicare, by law, private insurance is not allowed to cover that thing. Okay. So now that would, of course, reduce, since Medicare for all is it covers so much, it would reduce the role of private insurance to basically supplementary coverage and effectively eliminate the need for a private insurance. So it would be very, very comprehensive. So I know, again, there's a lot of confusion here, and Lester Holt's question was ridiculous. It's a flawed question. It's actually based on a talking point used by the health insurance industry to fight against Medicare for all. So they say, you're going to get rid of private insurance. Well, a lot of people like their private insurance through their employer. Oh, Medicare for all, you're going to get rid of that? Oh, my God. No, that's terrible. You're taking something away from the American people. No. You're actually giving something more to the average worker. And not only that, but you're helping those workplaces because they no longer are on the hook to providing health insurance that saves them money too, right? So you have to understand the perspective here from the so-called impartial moderators. That was a BS question. All right, so now let me give you the statement here from the Harris campaign. This is Lily Adams, spokeswoman, said on NBC on Friday that Harris had been, quote, very clear about her stance on private insurance. Also noting that some supplemental insurance is available under Sanders' single-payer plan, which is true. Now, the thing is that this worries me because the waters are being muddied by pro-health insurance groups and talking points from, pro-health insurance think tanks. Many people don't know what Medicare for All actually would do or cover. It would replace your employer-sponsored insurance, or if you don't have employer-sponsored insurance, it would replace your insurance or give you insurance for the first time with better, more comprehensive public insurance that actually covers a wider thing than traditional Medicare. And that's another misconception that we have, is that, well, Medicare, you need supplemental plans to cover some very basic things in Medicare because it doesn't cover certain things. Medicare for All expands coverage to a lot of the things traditionally covered by supplemental insurance. So it is actually a very wide expansion of the Medicare plan, expanding both coverage as well as how many people are actually covered by the plan. So, now, Larry Levitt, and I want to go here to a quote here from him, who's the senior vice president for health reform at the Kaiser Family Foundation, said this back in May, quote, "As a technical matter, the Medicare for All bill would allow private insurers to sell supplemental policies for benefits not covered by the government plan." Okay, that's fairly clear. But he added, quote, "As a practical matter, the government plan covers such a comprehensive set of benefits that there would virtually be no role for private insurance." So it would effectively eliminate the need for private insurance. Why? Because you wouldn't need it, because most of everything that you want would be already covered. So now it makes sense for Bernie Sanders to raise his hand and say, of course I want to abolish private insurance. Why? Because my plan, basically, you'll never need it. And that, of course, makes sense. I agree with Bernie Sanders. But, of course, then you get into the negative messaging by all these think tanks. And I think that actually gives the establishment a good attack that might be effective in muddying, or that's very effective in muddying the waters. And that makes it, I guess, less likely for regular people when they hear about Medicare for All without the details, when they hear it from corporate media, of course, to think, oh man, I don't want my private insurance to go away. The whole narrative that it will take away your health insurance is based on this, right? On the muddying of this, like the confusion around this plan, right? So now Harris isn't entirely wrong to say that. And I think the question, like I said before, is a bit of a trap. That said, do I trust Kamala Harris? No, of course not. She says that she's a Medicare for All, that she's a proponent of Medicare for All, but then again, she also said that she would be open to other plans. Now, she also hasn't signed the TYT pledge to support these policies, and she's been very vague, going back and forth, so nobody really knows, right? I don't know. She does say some good things, progressive things, and then she turns around. For example, on CNN in January, Harris said, quote, "Who of us has not had that situation where you have to wait for approval? And the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this." And she said, quote, "Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on." I love it. See, that's a good statement. It's a strong statement. It's very clear, right? But then the next day, a Harris aide, after she had apparently had a talking to, said the candidate would be open to other health plans that would preserve the health insurance industry as it is, like a public option. And so there's a difference, a big difference between the Sanders supplementary plans, which would, I think, cover electives, versus a public option plan, which would basically preserve the industry as a whole. Now, you really can't be for a single-payer plan and also be for a public option, because those are two completely different visions for healthcare in America. One, having private health insurance continue to play a very large role, versus private health insurance basically being relegated to something that probably not many people would opt into because, again, they really wouldn't need to. Now, Robert Hockett, an expert in public policy at Cornell, said it was unclear if all the candidates who say they support Medicare for All believe in the virtual elimination of private health insurance that Sanders' plan would entail. Hockett said this, quote, "Since Medicare for All is a buzzword among progressives, many candidates have gotten on board at least with the phrase. But it's not always clear what the phrase means for each candidate. This whole debate needs clarification." And that is why, of course, I am very concerned, because there's not a lot of people out there that are clarifying this. Now, there are a few on the progressive side that are putting out very detailed videos that are breaking things down. Ryan Skolnick on Facebook does a lot of that. And there actually needs to be more of a discussion on what all this stuff means, because not a lot of people know. Now, on the national stage, and before actually I go to that, it's kind of sad that not a lot of people know when the media is supposed to be out there explaining this, right? But the media doesn't explain it because they are funded by health insurance companies and big corporations. So they have a vested interest in not informing the public about what this stuff actually is, what it means, what it actually covers, etc. They are more interested in doing gotcha questions and, of course, not clarifying actual policy positions. Now, as far as the candidates are concerned, again, I'm worried about Harris. She's flip-flopped way too much on this. I don't believe her. And also, I still don't quite believe Elizabeth Warren. But to her credit, she did sign the PYT pledge, saying that she is going to fight for this. And so that at least helps somewhat. It's a little bit more of a stronger stance. She has come out strong for Medicare for All. But then again, we don't really know. The only one that we can ever really be sure of is Bernie Sanders, and that's because he is the only one that has been consistent on this issue. Everybody else has been too wishy-washy, which for me, this is a litmus test for me. If you're not 100% for single payer, which would eliminate the need for private insurance under the Sanders plan, then I'm just not interested. I'm not interested in keeping private health insurance as it is around because it is used basically primarily for profit. Because while some of these people don't seem to know what Medicare for All means, millions of us voters do. And as far as we're concerned, the primary, we will accept no middle ground. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.